Welcome to the Drilling Millions podcast, presented by Sage Dental Partners.
So today on the pod, we have my good friend Camilo. I think when a lot of people talk to me about, being an entrepreneur and having that sort of entrepreneurial gene, I think immediately of you, because I think you're the only other person I know in dental school that sort of has that same, mindset. So why don't you just sort of take a second and introduce yourself?
Thanks, Akil, for having me on the pod here. So I'm a fourth year dental school student. So basically I study in Ireland, in Northern Ireland, in Queen's University, Belfast. Yeah, that's basically, I'm in the same shoes as you. So it's a 5-year program. So it's the equivalent year that you would be in right now at University of Toronto. So you're third year of 4 and I'm fourth year of 5.
It's sort of funny for the listeners how we met. So Camilo and I met when we both went to Western. And I think we both had the ambition to be in medical school. And him and I both met in an MCAT prep course that we both probably went to 25% of the course and then just dipped. So
that was a fun time. Do you remember those days?
Yeah, it's sort of funny
it was like so long ago, not gonna lie.
I know. Back when we were little youngins at Western, but it's funny that how our paths sort of converged again, because I don't even know if we spoke that much in the MCAT course. And then once I was in dental school and you were in dental school, we had the same car, and we just started going on cruises and realized that we had a similar sort of mindset. We had our cigar nights, so.
To be continued cigar nights.
Exactly.
Yeah, that basically follows into our mindsets, right? So like you said, we started wanting to go to med school for good reason, but also we realized that at the end of it all, we also care a lot about our time, so freedom. And so in terms of that, my personal opinion anyways, I think dentistry is more allowing of a work-life balance than a medical doctor would be. And I think you can agree that's true. So we kind of went that route. But yeah, at the end of the day, we're still helping people. We still love to help people, work with our hands. That's also a reason why I went into the field. But at the end of it all, we're also very business minded. So we want to own our own clinics, this, that. And I think that takes us into, wanting to, make ends meet, finding ways to make money. And so I think, that's followed me throughout even just being in dental school, just trying to find a way, to survive, just not have that strict budget for groceries, or whatever the case may be. So I've picked up a few side hustles along the way, and I'm sure you have as well. So yeah, we can discuss about that.
Yeah, well, I think the importance here, for people that are in dental school or thinking of going to dental school and maybe who have already graduated, is even beyond making money in dental school, which is really important, because I think sometimes we get into that mindset of we're still students, and that's sort of the excuse of not building and not making money when you're in school. An alternate reason is you really need to start developing that financial literacy. You're not going to get from school. Does your university teach you finance or business at all?
Not at all, unfortunately. No, I don't know any university that does. Does yours?
No, we get a couple of practice management courses, but there's really nothing in there from what I've heard, from upper years that's of really that much relevance or use.
Right. Now that you mentioned that, I think we do have one lecture at some point in the future that I have heard, but at the end of the day, like you said, not that useful. I think, just real world experience is probably your best bet, trial and error. At least try, you know what I mean? It's kind of like the route I would go, but yeah.
Yeah. So why don't we talk a little bit about, what yours was? Maybe we'll start with one of your side hustles, but let's talk about, I think, one of your first loves, which was trading, right?
Yeah. So I would say trading became a big part of my life when COVID hit, as it would have for many people. I was actually trading slightly earlier than COVID, but I really got into it when, we got our clinics started shutting down in dental school. I actually got sent home in my second year of dental school back to Canada because everything was online. So it was optional to be, in Ireland itself. So I went back home, and then, just because you're online, you do have the spare time. You're not wasting time going to school and back. So I really, took the opportunity to really hone in on that, learning, mastering the skill of trading, of day trading in particular. And so that allowed me to, so initially, basically how I did it was, just to summarize it really quick, there's what's called funding programs out there. So obviously at the time, didn't have much capital as you would as a student, right? And then there's these funding programs that basically, if you can prove yourself a worthy trader, to say it at the very base, you would basically be funded a certain amount of money, and then basically on the profit you would make on a certain sized account. So let's say the account size is 100 grand, and then you would make money on that by day trading. You would take a percentage of the profits at the end of the month, and then the other, whatever's remaining, the company would, because they provided you with this funding. And so, yeah, so basically I went off that. I had a bunch of friends that were also involved in it, learning as well. Trading, we would hop on, morning sessions, just because we had the extra time. And so just doing that over and over on repeat really allowed me to, grasp the skill set that honestly, I actually really love, and no one can take away, really, because it's a skill that's very valuable and, will allow you to, like, basically, as I call it, print money out of thin air. But yeah, so that's how I started. And I continue to do that while in dental school. So third year came, fourth year now. Whenever I have the time, I kind of just try to look in the morning every time I go to before I go to clinic, look at the market, what's going on, kind of plan. Then I don't have the time to execute, right? But usually when I come home, I kind of know the direction of the day, and I either see a trade or not, and I take it. That's it. And I'm usually in and out of position on a day-to-day basis. I don't like to hold things overnight because, with the added stress of school, you don't want that on the back of your mind either. So we do with what we can, and then some days are lighter than others, so just that's how it's been, and it's going well. So yeah, what about yourself?
No, yikes. I've had a couple of kicks at the can. The first real gig I got when I was in dental school was a couple of companies approached me, and they had known that I was a management consultant in my past life. So they had said, okay, we're in the dental space, you're in the dental space. We have a startup, and you have sort of that consulting experience. Can you come on our team and help us? And what I found was really interesting in that particular case was I was listening to, Naval, right?
I do, yeah.
Naval, you listen, not personally, but his stuff and how he's like the guru of Silicon Valley. And he said this really impactful quote to me, he had this really impactful quote, which was, "You'll never get rich trading time for money." So I remember there were a couple of opportunities that had come up. Maybe it was, some could call it arrogant, or some could call it bratty, but, I just think it's good business and smart business, which was, at the time I'd said, I'm not going to be trading my time for an hourly consulting fee. If I'm going to be, in the trenches with you guys and really helping full time and giving this my all. And this was during COVID, so I had the time. I need equity. And a couple of them actually said no, and I walked away from thousands of dollars of hourly consulting fees because of having a conviction. Whether or not that's going to turn out to be the right decision, or whether or not that did turn out to be the right decision, I'll never know. Having these lessons early on in life, and even if it was the wrong decision, the fact that I made one is really going to be empowering when I graduate and when I start my practices, or when I move through the dental space, because I'll have these lessons in my back pocket, which I'm sure with trading and reading financial statements and actually looking at a balance sheet, things normal people and normal dental students don't get exposure to. I feel like that's where it'll make all the difference. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, so I would say, just going back on that, like, yeah, dental school doesn't really teach you, financial literacy. So obviously by doing these side things, you're not just learning a skill, but you're also meeting new people in different fields. And that might be in the financial sector like you did. And then I met some people through the trading world. So I think just getting that exposure, like you said, allows you to think differently a little bit and realize that, trading time for money is, not the way. Because, that's just, I don't know, like, it's just that rat race, right? As everybody calls it, is just not something that's like exciting to me. Like, I don't want to be part of that. So, yeah, like, I think just putting yourself out there, learning something new, but you also meet new people is like something, that allows you to learn new skills. Like, I would completely agree with, with what you said. Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like learning new skills, will never guide you wrong. No matter how irrelevant you think that skill set is, it will always, if you want to be an entrepreneur, which 70% of dentists will be in some way or another, you're gonna need to be a jack of all trades, right? Like, you need to be the finance person, you need to be the marketing person, you need to be the HR person, you need to be the CEO, right? That does the blue sky thinking. But I wonder, through trading, you're a pretty forward thinking guy. Where do you foresee those skills coming back and helping you in your dental career?
In terms of my dental career, I wouldn't correlate it, directly with dentistry, obviously, because they're two completely different fields. But at the end of the day, let's say, for example, you're aiming to, be a part-time dentist, own a couple clinics here and there, or whatever the case may be, maybe build a dental empire. What are you going to do with this extra capital, that you may have one day? Well, I think trading allows me to understand, how to read a chart, how to make the right decisions, when to buy, when to exit a position, you know what I mean? So whether it's not necessarily day trading, I still understand the macro picture when I look at a chart. And so, on a long-term scale, it makes sense to know if I want to buy, for example, Amazon stock, right? Like, I want to be making sure I'm not buying the Pico top of that stock, right? So just having that, habit of reading charts on a day-to-day basis allows you to just make, better financial decisions with this extra capital that you may have one day, right? So I think that's where it's going to make a huge difference. But also, like I said, you're meeting new people, they're giving you different insight on how they made their money. So they're also giving you ways to diversify your income, maybe in terms of real estate, like things you never thought about before, because school doesn't really give you that type of exposure, right?
Yeah.
So through trading, I've met people that have made money in trading, but also invest in real estate or invest. And then there's different types of real estate you can go into, right? There's commercial, residential, whatever the case may be. So I'm just giving a bunch of examples here. Hopefully it makes sense. Being exposed is heavily important because it just gives you that vast knowledge to make the right decisions later on so that you can truly live that passive income life that I think me and you are aiming for, right?
Yeah. I think you need to be as lazy as possible and earn as much as you can. That's my philosophy.
I would agree you want to be lazy later on, but obviously you need to hustle now to make the ends meet later, right? So
yeah. I had dinner a couple nights ago with a really brilliant dentist. He's more of an entrepreneur, but he's also a practicing dentist. And at one point he owned, I think, over 9 or 10 clinics, so has done really, really well. And one thing he had said was, when he guides new dentists or just recent graduates and they're looking to buy a practice, he's like, so many people get paralysis of analysis and they just never make that dive in. And a lot of people miss is they're trying to time the market. Oh, this practice is $20,000 too expensive, it's $50,000 too expensive. And he's saying, just treat it like an extension of dental school. Like, this is, if you overpay for it, that's your education fee. if you don't, but the point is just get in the game, because as soon as you get in the game of practice ownership, he said he's had to scout for none of his practices. He's looked for none of his practices, all from come to him. And because he was a practice owner and because he, was just in the game, people just gave him practices like that. Like they were like, hey, we're selling a practice. Do you want to buy? Or it just gives him that extra, it just gives him that extra, like to your point, network of people that he can just, talk to, bounce ideas off of. And eventually it ended up, being a big reason why he did so well, was because he was just in the game. So I think that's probably another point it sounds like you're making, which is, just be in the space of great minds, and good things will probably happen.
Right, like they say, there's that famous saying, it's like, oh, you're the sum of the 5 people you surround yourself with, right? I'm sure you've heard that before.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's it's honestly true. Your mindset kind of comes from who you surround yourself with. But yeah, I think what I've noticed in terms of, students, whether it's students, supervisors, just strictly dentists, right, that are not business owners, is more so the fear of failure is just non-existent, or sorry, it is existent at an extent that's a bit too high, right? Where they're just not willing to take that added risk of just opening a practice, like you were saying, right? This is too expensive, 20,000, whatever you're, the examples you're giving. I think that comes because the whole time that you were trying to get into dental school was you just never failed, right? Like you always had to get the high mark.
Yeah.
So were you really that 50% student when you were trying to get to dental school? Like, no, that probably did not happen, right? So you never really failed. Like you failed in terms of other people that were trying to get there. Like you got a 90, the other person got a 95. Like, sure, you can call that a failure, right? In terms of, direct comparison to another high achieving student. But at the end of the day, you're not really failing at that per se task, And so I think going back to trading, you're taking losses, a lot of losses when you're initially learning, and just going through that learning curve and experiencing these failures, it kind of desensitizes you a bit. And to me, I think it's taught me a lot in terms of how to look at the future. Because the way I look at it is like, okay, trading, people call it gambling. It's like high risk, right? It's a high risk market, whether you're trading stocks, foreign exchange, whatever the case may be, it's high risk. Now you're going to go and invest into a clinic. Is a clinic really high risk? In my eyes, no, but in somebody else's eyes that hasn't gone through, that aspect of things, they would say, oh yeah, it's too pricey, too this, too that, like you said. So I think, by going through these side hustles and learning to fail for real, right? Not just this fake failure, will just give you a better outlook and, just allow you to just dive in later on and just, get with it. So, what do you think about that?
Well, yeah, it's like, when is the last time you saw a dentist go bankrupt? Like never.
Exactly.
It's I had one in one practice management consultant come on, and we were talking off the air, and he's like, dentists are the only ones that are rich enough to be as stupid as they are. Because he's like, if you're paying an extra 3%, 4% for sundries, or if you're paying an extra couple of percent for your rent, or you're not negotiating your rent properly, you make so much money that it doesn't matter really to your bottom line, because you don't notice that on the margins, right? It's like you don't notice that little like 2 or 3% because you're bringing in so much cash. And this whole time, it's like when you buy a new practice, like you're buying not only the practice, the patients, the physical location, you're buying the free cash flow that's coming in, right? So there's this asset you bought is like actively making you money. It's not like a house where it's just going to appreciate. Your house isn't paying you unless you're renting it out, but like your house isn't paying you to just sit there. Versus if you buy a dental practice, like the cash flow is paying you and it's servicing that loan, right? You have, and you're right. It's like learning how to take those risks. I always wondered that about, entrepreneurship or other domains. Like if you think of tech startups, like that's like you either make $1 billion, you make nothing, right?
Yeah.
There's no middle ground. And I listened to, well, you listen to it too, right? All In,
Yeah, the All In podcast, great podcast.
the All In podcast, and Chamath said something, and he said, the real flavor of Silicon Valley is not really like, yeah, you're surrounded by really bright people and you're surrounded by, some of the, biggest VCs, but the real spice there and the real, reason why it's, Silicon Valley is because they celebrate failure. And they celebrate, the learnings and the lessons you get from failure. And almost every single great entrepreneur, like Elon Musk, like you name them, like they all have so many failures under their belt, but you just never hear them because their success is just so much, or way overshadow their failures.
Exactly. Yeah, I would completely agree with that.
So
Yeah.
what about your time management? Like how do you manage your time juggling? So obviously the trading is a huge aspect of what you do. Like how do you fit in? I know there's other things you do in your day. How do you fit in all of that, with dental school?
Yeah, so I would say honestly, before this year, dental school was busy, but it wasn't heavily clinic based as it is this year. So this is where I saw the big transition year for me in terms of having to balance, clinics versus, these side hustles, which is trading. And the way I do it, like I explained to you earlier, is basically I would wake up, sip on a coffee, and then basically hop on the charts. Like that's kind of like that's how I start my day. And I'm looking at the direction for the day. And then basically I don't have time because I have to go to clinic. I don't have time to enter a position. So I go to clinic, do my thing, and then come back and then hop on the chart again. And when I hop on the chart, if I see a position in the intended direction that I saw in the morning, then I take the trade, right? So at the end of the day, it's just all risk benefit. So is the trade, worth it in terms of how much money I can make versus how much money I could possibly lose, right? It's all risk benefit at the end of the day. So if it's in the intended direction that I said in the morning, then I find the position that, correlates with the direction, I'll take it. If not, no trade that day, right? And there's nothing wrong with not taking a trade. Now we're getting a bit specific in trading, but, sometimes the best trade is no trade. So yeah, that's kind of how I balance it out. It's more a morning and after clinic time of thing. It's more than anything. There's no real, I mean, I can monitor the chart on my phone throughout patients, which I kind of do in terms sometimes, but not really. Yeah. Clinic is really a 9 to 5 thing. You just wake up tad earlier, look at the market direction, come back at 5 p.m., even before eating dinner, sometimes I'm hopping on the charts just to try and see if there's something, available.
What time are you waking up and what time are you going to bed?
So on a regular day, like a Monday to Friday, would be a 6 a.m. wake up, just so I can have enough time to make that coffee, properly sit down on the charts. You still want to be like slightly awake. The big thing, I don't know if you know, but in trading, like you have an edge, you have a mechanical edge, and that's like 20% of like winning a trade. And then 80% is really the psychology behind it. And so at the end of the day, you want to be in a good mindset to be able to look at the market because you want to be making good decisions, right? And so you need a healthy mind, awake mind to be able to make these decisions. So wake up at 6 a.m., have that coffee and have that time to wake up and then go and have a fresh, clear mind to identify the direction. So yeah, that's basically how I do it. Yeah.
Awesome.